Welcome back to Professor Grimdark's vlog, Volume 5. 5. We've come a long way, class. We have defined what Grimdark Fantasy is, looking at the 7 qualifiers at the beginning of the show. And we discussed what Joe Abercrombie's The First Law trilogy. Then we had an amazing discussion about Anna Smith Sparks' The Court of Broken Knives, and a brilliant interview with the author. Then we also talked about Mark Lawrence's Broken Empire series. So we've come a long way, and we covered a lot of topics so far. We covered, the protagonists that are perfect, the anti-hero, and Prince of Thorns. You have George. He's an amazing anti-hero. We covered basically all the elements of Grimdark that's present within Joe Abercrombie's First Law trilogy. And we're really going to hit on one big topic today, and that would be how gods and goddesses are sometimes present within Grimdark fantasy. And one of the perfect examples that I find would be Anna Stevens' Godblind. Here, the gods actually take an active part in the lives of the people that they want to rule over. And we have 2 sections going on there. You have the red gods and the gods of light. Of course, the red gods are the ones that have been banished from the place. So they're trying their best to try to come back in. Now, typically in Grimdark fantasy, quite often the gods are already dead. Like, for example, in Luke Skull's Grim Company, they're literally feeding off the magic of dead gods there. So that's how they got magic in their world. Or the humans themselves have kind of become godlike figures in the First Law trilogy with the mages. And then you also have the technology itself kind of becomes a god-like figure in the Broken Empire series from Mark Lawrence. And there's a whole bunch of other examples that we'll eventually get into later on in different volumes. So I find it very fascinating that in this book here, we actually see the gods interacting with the humans and playing a big role into it. And in fact, the red gods themselves show up, and they require, like their name says, blood. Red and blood. So one of the most horrific scenes, in which I'm not going to tell you about in detail, because you need to read it for yourself, actually demands a sacrifice to bring about a message from God, the god there. So the goddess, I should say. So it's very brutal, and it fits right along with the Grimdark theme. Now, the thing about the book itself is that the way this is separated into very short sections. So each section kind of covers a different point of view. And just to give you an example, like you can see here is a name, little epigraph there, and that would be right there on, oops, the page is not numbered, but here it is. The other page was page 1, so this would be page 2. And each chapter is pretty short, so there's a section break here on page 5, which leads to a really fast pace. Especially since, right away we're introduced to conflict in the piece. And there is violence against women, of course, in the opening. And you can check that out. If you're squeamish against that, then you may want to kind of look over some of this. And look at here on page 7, we now come to a brand new character. So, like I was saying, you do have the gods kind of intervening within the piece here, which I find is very fascinating. Because sometimes you will see that, quite often the gods themselves are either non-existent or they're already some sort of afterthought or religious aspect there. So I find that if you're interested in reading about, especially dealing with cultures and religion here, this one definitely has it. One interesting aspect that Anna Stevens does with her gods is that the humans can actually basically give themselves over as like a vessel by making some sort of tattoo or mark upon their body, which says that they belong to them. And she really uses this in the book itself, which another scene that's in there, which you will encounter, is when you have a whole group of people who are basically forced to give themselves over to the red gods. But like I said, I don't really want to give away too many spoilers here, and I just want to give you kind of like an insight and overview of the book here, because what we have coming up is a very special treat. We actually have the author herself going to talk about basically, her process and weight class. She's going to give us a little bit of a reading. So here comes the author. Please enjoy. And so welcome to the Professor Grimdark show. And today we have a special guest, Anna Stevens. And today we're going to be talking about her novel, Godblind, and her soon-to-be released novel, Darksoul. Thank you for being on the show today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Really great to be here.
So, what's it like to have your second book already released over in the UK, correct, right now?
Yeah, it came out 2 days ago.
All right.
So I'm still pretty high at the moment.
And then your release in the United States will be September 4th, correct?
I think it might actually have been pushed back slightly. The last I heard was there was a bit of a delay in publishing. So it may now be as far back as January, which is a real shame, I'm still waiting on confirmation, but I think it's going to be a lot closer to Christmas than we had originally planned.
Oh my goodness, this is for the United States over here?
Yeah, it's for North America, yeah.
Oh my goodness. So why did they give you any type of rationale why it might be?
I think there was, so the manuscript that was accepted in the UK, when it went over to the US, there was a problem with the formatting, and a lot of the proofreading sort of fell apart. So basically they had to send it back, and I had to do it all again. And then they basically just missed their window to actually get it printed. So then it was in the queue then. So now it's waiting to get back up to the front so that it can be printed. So basically, it's a real shame. It was an administrative error, but that's the publishing world, unfortunately. Sometimes these things happen. It will still be out, just unfortunately a few months later than we had hoped.
That's a very grimdark waiting here, it's killing us. So, well, I guess I might have to order mine from the UK region and wait for the US to come out here. So we'll see who comes first.
Wow, yeah.
All right. So, in your debut novel, what was it like to what was your writing like? Just give us a day in the life of Anna Stevens here.
As in before I was published?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Godblind was a book that was written over, well over a decade to get to the version that has been published. So for all of that time, I was still working. Part of that time, I was also doing a part-time degree. So writing was very much just jammed in around the edges for a long time. And then once I graduated, I knew that it was something I really wanted to put the time and the effort into. So because doing a part-time degree with a full-time job is time consuming, I had come up, learned how to manage my time particularly well. So I basically carried on my same routine, which was getting up really early, and whereas I used to do 90 minutes of study before work, I just carried on that, but I did 90 minutes of writing. So that was how I managed to get enough words at one time, so to speak, so that I could get a completed manuscript together. And then it was the same old, revise it, send it out on submission, have it rejected, rewrite it, send it out on submission, have it rejected. And that was sort of an annual cycle for probably 5 or 6 years. And then obviously every time I rewrote it, I was getting better as a writer, and I was refining what the story was about and how I wanted to approach things, until we got to the point where I started getting definite interest from agents. So I was this close to, I can't take this anymore, this has been going on for too long. And then I got a couple of, we want to see the full manuscript, and that was it. I was, all enthusiastic again. And then, eventually, my agent now, Harry, he read the opening chapters, loved it, asked for the full manuscript on something like the Thursday, and phoned me up on the Tuesday to say that he wanted to represent me. Mm-hmm. So when it did happen, it happened really, really fast, but it was actually 13 years to get to the really fast bit.
Yeah, it's the slow to the fast. Now, did you have book 2 already started when you were submitting, or were you just like refining book 1, trying to think about where book 2 was going, or what was the process?
Yeah, I do have a really old, really bad version of book 2 and kind of half of book 3. Mm-hmm. That I'd sort of started to do when Godblind was out on submission. So to keep myself busy while I was waiting to be rejected, basically, I carried on writing the next books. Mm-hmm. I don't think there is a single thing in those drafts that actually made it into Darksoul. Wow. It was pretty much just something to keep doing, but obviously because I was refining my style and my technique with Godblind, when it did come time to write Darksoul for the first time, to draft it, I did look at the old version and it was just terrible. So it's never going to see the light of day, ever.
That's in the save for the laugh files later on in life, and
yeah. If I ever set up a Patreon account, and if I really need the money, I might sort of post snippets from, this is the 2004 version of Godblind or something, just for the laughs. But I'll probably never be able to show my face again if I do that.
Well, I understand that completely. So how would you describe your voice and style for this book? For Godblind?
It's something that definitely evolved over a long period of time. The very first version of Godblind was absolutely the opposite end to Grimdark. I mean, it actually was Noble Bright. I mean, that's how far my writing style has evolved. Wow. We've gone from everyone is beautiful and pure and wonderful to everyone is pretty and nasty. And
did that come with each rejection? Did it come with each rejection? It got darker and darker. You're like,
I think it actually did.
You're an agent. You're this character now.
Yeah. I hate you. But it also matured quite a lot. My tone of voice and my style of writing went from being sort of very, very descriptive to actually stripping out as much of that as I could, mm-hmm. to make it. I always refer to it as quite a lean style.
Yes.
So that when I do put passages of description in about a particular moment or a particular, view or something like that, when that description is in there, hopefully it will have a bit more power, mm-hmm. because it is so so uncommon, really. So yeah, just try and keep it quite lean and just let the reader's imagination fill in the blanks, really.
Yeah, I mean, just to give you a sample for the viewers, basically each chapter is averages what, like 5 to 6 pages. Actually, not the
Yeah,
chapters itself. Sometimes even sections within the chapter are really fast. Like if I look and the each chapter has like a little character title involved, and they read really quickly, which and some keeps the pace going and it keeps
yeah,
the reader turning the pages. Like after the first four pages, you automatically see another break. That's awesome though, because usually in a lot of fantasy, you're all like, all right, 30 pages in, oh, chapter two.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Right.
That was actually a style choice by the publishers.
Okay.
So when Harper Voyager, they bought the book, and it was a much more traditional chapter setter originally.
Okay.
So there would be section breaks that would change the point of view, but
Yes.
within a much larger chapter. And then the publisher said, look, we've got this idea that every chapter is going to be its own point of view, like in A Song of Ice and Fire. What do you think about it? And I said, if you're going to make me sound like A Song of Ice and Fire, I am really happy to go with that. So that was a decision that we made. But then it wasn't actually until I saw the printed book that I realized just how short some of those chapters were. So, I mean, some of them are literally 2 pages long.
Yes.
Because it was just a short point of view in one place, and then someone else's point of view in the same place. So originally they were normal chapters.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, some people have really don't enjoy the very, very short chapters. Other people really like them. So
can't please everybody.
Definitely, everybody's different. You can't please everyone. With Darksoul, I have, on the whole, gone slightly longer.
Okay.
Because I know that this is how the books are going to be laid out now.
Awesome.
So there are definitely still some very short chapters in there because people do like them, but then there are also a few that are very detailed and quite long. But again, I think that's just also a sign of me maturing as a writer.
Yes.
And just being aware of these other choices that publishers make and how best to stick with my own style but maximize their approach at the same time.
Definitely. I mean, I've seen it in especially a lot of different fantasy series there where you can see where the first book of an author starts off in one way. You can see how the style, the structure is like almost in some ways, like I was referring back to Mark Lawrence's Prince of Thorns. His first book, you can see how very sparse and even the voice of George is it's there, it's strong, but in the next book, it becomes stronger here. So you can see the evolution from one book to the next. So do you see an evolution coming from Godblind to Darksoul in your writing style?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. I mean, the setup between the 2 books is quite different as well. So Godblind is pretty much spread over an entire country. And Soul is probably 90% in a single city.
Got it.
So everyone is a lot closer together.
Okay.
So they're all in the same place, and that has tended to sort of concentrate my writing down a little bit.
Okay.
So if anything, it's even leaner than Godblind, but the pacing is quite high all the way through.
Got it.
So a few early reviewers have said that they were sort of physically exhausted by the end of it because it's quite relentless. So we had to sort of make put another plot line in there that just takes everything away from the city and the siege and the endless battles.
Yeah.
In order basically to give the reader a break. and just to get away for a few minutes, and so that the pace can drop, and it's almost for them to be able to take a breath.
Yes.
And then back in again.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I've definitely, from Godblind to Darksoul, I think I've definitely improved as a writer. Now, of course, I have to carry it through to book 3, which the pressure is terrifying.
That's right. And this is going to be a straight up trilogy, right? It's not going to be a continuous series? Okay.
No. I mean, this story has a definite conclusion at the end of book 3. I've been trying to save as many characters as possible in case I could ever do like a 10 years later another book. But my agent is very firm that we have got to kill off more people. So
kill off more people.
It's very upsetting.
The body count is pretty high in Godblind as it is, and then there we go. Let's just pile more on.
Yeah.
Have a big old bonfire. It's all good.
Yeah. I mean, I was hoping to save at least a few favorites so that I could maybe do another book later on in a few years that was set after all of these events. But it sounds like I'm not allowed to do that. So it's just going to have to be brand new characters if I come back to the world.
Aw, they're like, no, you can't have that. Aw.
Yeah.
Too bad.
It's like you need to traumatize your readers.
Yes.
And okay.
it's Grimdark. If you save him, it's no longer Grimdark.
Well, there is that. But it is quite traumatic for me as the writer to actually horribly kill people that I consider. I mean, I know that they're imaginary, but I do consider them to be my family.
Yes.
So it's sort of like me, going and killing my husband or something. It's unpleasant, very unpleasant. So I did shed a few tears when I was drafting book 3.
Okay.
I think you have to. I think if the writer isn't emotionally invested, then the reader won't be.
That's exactly a good point there. And you have a little bit of a sample reading for us, correct?
I do, yeah. I've got a fairly short section from Darksoul. So from the opening of book 2. So I'm just going to show you the cover.
Yes, tease us with it because we're going to have to wait for a long time. Yay!
Okay. Let me find it.
It's okay.
Okay, so I'm actually going to read sort of the opening 3 pages.
Yes.
So right from the very start. So it's actually set on day 17 of the siege. So from the events of the end of Godblind, we've moved on a couple of weeks and we're now well into the siege of the city of Real Corinth. Okay. The last length of yellowed, crusted bandage came away with a soft sucking sound, and the sickly sweet, hideous scent of rot plumed into the air. Hallus's nose wrinkled. Durdil coughed hard and snorted. It didn't clear the stink. On the opposite side of the bed, 2 of the priests faltered in their chanting, and then, halting, retching, caught up with the others. Durdil peered over Hallus's shoulder. How? How is he still alive? Gods only know, Hallus grunted. He used a long silver spoon with a slim bowl to poke at the wound, and Durdil was reminded, sickeningly, of eating a custard tart.
Gross.
He swallowed, tasting bile. The end's near, though, Durdil, very near. And the enemy is clamouring at our gates, Durdil fretted. I need to be on the wall, but what if he wakes? Hallus jabbed the spoon against the neatly sutured red and yellow weeping flesh of Rastot's chest. The dying man moaned but did not stir. He's not waking up again, my friend, he said softly. Not this side of the light. He straightened and faced Durdil, and Durdil gritted his teeth against what he knew was coming, again. He may be unconscious, but he's in unspeakable agony in there nonetheless. It's time we eased his pain. He's the king, Halos. Ending his life would be regicide, Durdle said, weariness taking the fervour from his words, so they just came out defeated instead. The voice in the back of his head agreed with the physician, pointed out that if it was him, he'd be begging them to do it. He pushed it away and looked to the priests for aid, but the most senior, Eric, gave a slow nod of agreement even as he prayed. No help there. Halos's black eyebrows, flecked with grey these days, drew down, and he touched Durdle's arm. It would be a mercy for your friend. Durdle opened his mouth, but Halos held up a finger. Would you deny a soldier, an officer, even a prince, the grace on the field of battle? No. You'd end their agony and pray them into the dancer's embrace. Rastoth was a soldier. He campaigned for years to the south and the east, fought the Crikites, fought the Listrans. Treat him as a soldier one last time. Do him that honour, and let us gift him into the light. At his words, the priests shifted their chanting, and Durdle recognised the song of mourning and of celebration of a life well lived. They were singing as though he was already dead, and Durdle's last choice was taken from him. His heart was breaking, had been breaking every hour of this endless, desperate siege. He was too tired to think clearly, too exhausted in body and mind to make any decision not immediately related to the preservation of the city for one more day. He had no idea what to do, why this decision had to fall to him. I'm the commander of the ranks, not the arbiter of life and death for kings. Not my king, anyway. Not Rastoth. The king's face was ashen, except for the hectic spots of red caused by the fever. Black lines ran from the neat tear in his chest, and the lips of the wound were red, angry, puckered, straining at their stitches as they swelled. Monstrous and on the point of bursting, obscene, overripe fruit that wanted only a touch, a breath, to split and spill its horror. Durdle had chewed his lip to ribbons since the siege began, and winced as he bit at it now. He scrubbed a hand across the back of his head and down his neck. Eric nodded again when he looked to him for aid. Halos was waiting, the plea clear on his eyes, on his lips and in his eyes. Give him what he can't ask for himself. Help him as you've helped him all your life. Serve him. I'll tell the council he succumbed to his wound, Durdle said eventually. They know it's inevitable, so we'll let them think it was a natural end. Otherwise our noble lords are likely stupid enough to accuse us of treason in the midst of this mess. Each of the priests nodded, and their voices swelled louder, urging Rastoth's spirit to begin breaking its anchors to his dying, rotting flesh. Opium, Halos murmured, selecting a small jar with a hand that didn't, and Durdle felt should, shake. You'll never get him to swallow it, will you? Halos's smile was weary and sad. There are things you will never know of my art, my old friend. Don't worry. Just say your goodbyes, yes? We should do it quickly, now the decision has been made. We should spare him any more of this sham of life.
You can already tell right away that this is, whereas in Godblind, each scene, it felt like it moved along so fast. Here, you're able to really delve into the emotional impact for the characters and just staying with them just even that little bit longer here. I could feel already the strength growing in the novel. So it's really, really amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, thank you, because you just gave us a one awesome glimpse of what we need to wait for now.
Well, I hope you do wait for it.
Oh, definitely. It'll be coming as soon as I can get it, I'm gonna get it. So, because I already have my extensive Grimdark library, it's gonna keep growing and growing and growing, and I'm really happy to have you a part of it. Definitely. So, you created these characters who are a lot of them are very brutal. Definitely. And some of them are conflicted, yes. Well, most of them are conflicted, but a lot of them are very just brutal. So my big question is this. What character would you not want to meet in a dark alley?
You know, that's really easy for me to answer, and it's Galtas.
Okay.
So, who is Prince Rivel's sort of henchman, really. And he is possibly the nastiest person that I've ever created. He's he's the sort of person who he was probably, he probably tortured kittens when he was a child, and he probably pulled the legs off spiders and all that kind of stuff, and there's just, for me, there is nothing redeeming about him whatsoever. He's just a nasty piece of work. He would, if you bumped into him in the street, he would probably kill you for it. He's just a bit of a sociopath. And whilst he has a sort of redeeming feature in that he is extremely loyal to Rivel, there is a definite seed of self-serving in that. He's only loyal to Rivel because Rivel is rich and royal and can give Galtus everything that Galtus wants, which is, money and power and high position and stuff like that. If he could get that from anyone else, he'd be that person's best friend.
It's typical Grimdark character, so that's good. Although not typical in the way, because not all Grimdark characters are like that. But yes, you definitely, I would agree with your choice. He's not someone that I'd sit back and be like, yeah, I trust you. No, not at all. Not at all. So, tell our viewers, where can we find you? What social media are you part of? I know you have www.anna, is it anna-stevens.com or org?
.com.
.com, okay. And any other social media you're part of that you want to share?
Yeah, sure. I'm on both Twitter and Instagram. But I'm on those under my married name, which is Smith. So I'm on both Twitter and Instagram as Anna Smith Writes. Okay. But obviously, if you just if you search Anna Stevens on Twitter, you're probably going to find me anyway. And then I'm on Facebook as Anna Stevens. Mm-hmm. Just to confuse matters. So I'm 2 Anna Stevens and 2 Anna Smiths on 4 different channels.
And at the end of the show, I'll put up links so people can find you. So everything will be good. Any final statements you want to make to our viewers?
No, I just, I hope you love Grimdark as much as we love Grimdark. And I hope you enjoy Godblind and Darksoul when it is finally released in your part of the world.
Well, thank you so much for being a wonderful guest on the show here. I'm very pleased, especially since, when I first asked you, I'm like, okay, maybe she'll say yes, maybe she'll say no. And you immediately said yes. And I'm like, good, thank you.
Oh,
Definitely
yeah.
Appreciate that.
I like being enthusiastic. I'm happy to chat books. Anyone else's books, not just my books, any books. So yeah, I'm always happy to goof around online.
Definitely. Well, that's wonderful. And I just want to say to our viewers, thank you for watching, and keep it grim, keep it dark, keep it reading.